Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs by a score of 3-2 at Madison Square Garden. A game that the Rangers really played pretty well. It was actually very winnable, but they don't get the 2 points, and that's what they need at this time of year. And that's where this would be a lot more acceptable if the Rangers hadn't just lost continuously, for that 4-15 stretch, and even recent losses to Pittsburgh and Buffalo and many, many others. Like this, you could, at that point chalk up to, hey, it just wasn't their night result wise, but they're, in the position where they need to get these points as much as they can. Now, 23 games to go. Rangers have failed to win 3 games in a row since the middle of November. I think that coincided with the beginning. That was the end of their good stretch. They had won 3 in a row. I know that the tail end was, I think it was San Jose, Seattle, and Vancouver. That was their last 3 winning streak. And then the whole, really, really, really bad stretch began. And they've yet to still win 3 in a row. That's a problem. Like, I find it hard to believe if you're not going to win 3 in a row, there's a good chance you're not making the playoffs. That's just the way it is. I mean, sure, you can do as much as you can, win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1. Look, that can, I mean, if you do that every single time, yeah, sure, maybe that can get you there, but that's pretty unlikely. But yeah, look, flat out, Igor Shesterkin, not good enough. I mean, allows 3 goals, and some of them were kind of fluky, but he contributed to the flukiness of some of those goals. And yet again, the Rangers allowing early goal periods early in the game and early in periods, just generally speaking. Now that's 11 goals allowed by the Rangers, league leading, in the first 2 minutes of a game. That happens again. It was a power play goal by Toronto, and then another early goal in the second period. And that one, I believe, was within the first 51 seconds into the second period. So that has been a thing all year long. I'm not sure the stats bear out there, but again, I do know for sure it's 11 goals allowed within the first 2 minutes of a game. Not good. And yet, look, Rangers outshot the Maple Leafs 35-17. What I want to do is also update the injury situation. And Adam Fox was placed on IR. It didn't look good the other night, and sure enough, that was kind of proven true. Apparently, he is supposed to be back by the end of the season. Where will the Rangers be in the standings by then? Who knows? When exactly will he return? No clue. My just sort of guess here is for Fox, as far as how long he'll be out, I'll say somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks, closer to 4. Like, I wouldn't be totally shocked if he missed all of March and makes his way back early April, but it could be sooner. It's not impossible. So that's not good. And I felt like his loss was especially missed on the power play. Rangers went with a 5-forward unit. I would not do that next game. I simply wouldn't. Rangers rolled for 3 in the power play. I would get Zach Jones on the number 1 unit, preferably. I mean, if you want to do Kendra Miller, I guess, but just may as well go Jones, in my opinion. And I would probably take specifically Alexis Lafreniere off. Lafreniere has been extremely, extremely disappointing, just generally speaking. It's very frustrating watching him, just not getting anything done at all. And we're back to that now. We really, really are, where, last year seemed like a breaking out of sorts for Lafreniere, and even the beginning of the season, there was somewhat of a continuation that is gone. And not to take Artemi Panarin off the hook. Panarin, like, his days as a Ranger are winding down. Like, he is, last year is his last, it's his last year under contract with the Rangers. And I really, really wouldn't think, I'd be surprised if he resign, if there's a extension of sorts. I'd be surprised by that personally. And so, do I think that Artemi Panarin will be on the Rangers opening night next year? I'll say it's more likely than unlikely, but way more crazy things have happened than if things get discussed in the offseason for a potential trade. I mean, Panarin is really on the decline. And I think, when you're looking, and we'll get back to some more positive injury news, but when I look at this team and a major difference from last year, and there's a lot of them, the big one to me, that Trocheck line is exponentially worse. And look, and that is now a general thing for the season, right? Because for a big chunk of the year, and a lot of that is still bleeding into now. Like Zibanejad and Kreider, majorly worse than last year. And with Mika now, finally, he has been, since 2025 began, right? So now 2 months. Zibanejad really has been one of the more consistent players, and really was one of the better players in this game as well. But as far as, again, Panarin, Lafreniere specifically, and Trocheck as well, not as much as those guys, but really he is in that category for me too. Has not been anywhere near good enough, and it's a major reason why the Rangers are where they are in the standings. So I would switch up that 5-man forward unit on the power play and have Zach Jones beyond there. And the easy one to take out for me is Lafreniere, because it's not going to be Panarin. And Trocheck at the very least, holds value for some versatility and face-off prowess. So that's probably what I would do. But Keandre Miller, the good news with him, who left the other game as well, Miller played in this game. So, and played a lot too. I think he played close to 23 minutes. He was the one that really, in Fox's absence, played a lot of minutes. And Keandre Miller normally is one of the more, heavy ice time leaders on defense, but that is the good news. And so the defensive pairs, and Matthew Robertson was called up, has yet to appear in an NHL game. He was the 7th defenseman. They, of course, stuck with Keandre Miller and Borgen. The big difference is Lindgren was paired with Vakanainen. Vakanainen moved to his offside, so Vakanainen on the right side. And we'll discuss some individual stuff as we move through the game. And then the other pair was Jones and Strider, who have been together before. Now, I've been critical of them in the past. I guess it makes sense why they're together because of the fact that, over time they've gotten better, but there was a pretty bad mistake in this game by those guys. Wasn't only their fault, but that was kind of led to the game-winning goal for Toronto. For the forwards, Chris Kreider again was out. And to me, with Kreider, it's kind of a half-injured, half-healthy scratch situation. That's kind of how I see it. I think he's healthy enough to go, maybe not 100% healthy enough to go. And with the Rangers having one last game and Kreider having kind of a rough year in general, I think that there's a lot that goes into that. That all said, coming off this loss, I have to think Kreider will be in next game. And the player that and really, in my opinion, my preference, it'll be, I don't know. My preference, I guess, would be for him to replace VC. Honestly, really, for me, I don't mind Kreider even being out. That's just me. Like, that is not bothersome to me, but I know that they'll likely get him in. I felt as if he wouldn't play this game, and that was held true. Coming off the loss, even though the Rangers played well, I think he probably comes out, and I think Veezy's the logical guy, although it could be Brodzinski, and it even could be Othman. Now, the forward lines were exactly as they were last game, and so Arthur Kaliev was also a healthy scratch. The bottom six, specifically that Brodzinski line, did not play nearly enough, and that's on Laviolette. Yes, you were getting good shifts, I suppose, from the top six, but Brendan Othman only playing 6 minutes and 31 seconds after what he did last game is ridiculous. Johnny Brodzinski only playing 7 minutes and 31 seconds, and Matt Rempe 4-12, 7 shifts. I mean, I was looking forward to seeing them in there, and so that is on Laviolette, really is. Whereas the third line, although VC didn't play much, but I see Carrick and Riley Smith's time, it was pretty high. Now, part of that is due to penalty kill time and, in the case of Riley Smith, a little bit of power play time, but, really, they were kind of rolling three lines. Rempe barely played. I don't think Rempe maybe even played a shift in the third period. So that is not great on the part of Peter Laviolette. Zibanejad almost played 25 minutes, but at least, which is a ton. But he did deserve it. He really had a lot of jump and looked pretty good. But Panarin playing 24 minutes, come on now. That's not right. And Alexis Lafreniere, 20 minutes, Trocheck 25. He really was pushing hard on that top six. I wouldn't have gone about it that way. I would have tried to roll the four lines a little bit more. Would it have been the same result? Potentially. But I just don't understand. Based on what happened last game, why are you now going to that? And that Panarin line has not been anywhere near good enough. And yes, the JT Miller Zibanejad line, they scored a goal, even strength, and they were fine. But I just feel as if that was mismanagement there by Peter Laviolette, no question. So let's discuss this one. Igor Shesterkin versus Anthony Stolarz was advantage Stolarz by far. right? You look at the Pittsburgh game, and it was Igor really outplaying Bloomquist. Here, it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, that one was a little more ugly. That one, Bloomquist was truly, truly horrific. Igor made some good saves, and he only allows 3, but 17 shots on goal, and the nature of them just was not great. Rangers never had the lead in this game, and what sucked is that Rangers came close to me breaking a Toronto streak. Toronto going to this game was 25-0, leading after 2 periods, and dating back to last year, 39-0. So now they stand at 40-0. Dating back to last season when leading going to third. That is very impressive. And not necessarily a thing I would have expected. However, like Toronto in the regular season really is, saying that they're about as good as it comes is maybe a bit much, but really consistently in the Austin Matthews era for the most part, or a little bit after that, maybe the John Tavares era, Toronto's been a very, very good regular season team and basically a shoo-in to make the playoffs, which is going to happen again here. So the problem is there's these little mental lapses by the Rangers that end up costing them. And what happens here is 18 seconds in, Zibanejad trips Austin Matthews. Now, Zibanejad wasn't happy about the call. We're not going to get into it much, although I will say, as much as I'm giving Mika praise and deservedly so, Zibanejad, I've noticed early in games, early in periods, has just been at his worst and just not quite ready to go. I've seen it many times. And Toronto took it to the Rangers on that first shift, noticeably, and it got them a power play. And they do score on it. And it was the second unit that got it done. At 147, Oliver Ekman-Larsson scores his 4th goal of the season, assisted by Max Domi and Morgan Rielly. What happens here is it was actually a really good kill by the Rangers. Vincent Trocheck was just not strong enough on the puck. Very frustrating. I know, Trocheck might be playing with an injury. I get that, but Trocheck needed to be harder on that puck and lost it too easily, and it led to a pretty quick passing play where Toronto scores what was really their most normal goal of the 3. And look, maybe it's like looking back in hindsight because Igor didn't have a good game, but even that goal, I didn't think that was an amazing goal allowed by Igor. Yes, give Toronto credit, and it wasn't as if it was something horrible, but I don't know. It did seem stoppable to me, and so that makes it 1-0 Toronto. But the Rangers really, and in some ways, I think that penalty kind of got Mika going. So maybe it did come with a positive, but the Rangers really, really had a very strong first period and just in general. And part of that, you could argue, is the Rangers were trailing for most of this game. So that does play into it just a bit. But I thought the Rangers really kept it going in the first and were eventually rewarded on a goal by Mika Zibanejad, his 13th goal of the season, assisted by Will Borgen and JT Miller. 13:08, 1-1 game. And it was a defensive zone draw won by Zibanejad. And then the Rangers going in with some momentum into the zone, nice passing. And eventually it ends up on the stick of Will Borgen, who shoots it towards the net generally. And Zibanejad very deftly gets a stick on the puck and a nice tip in past Stolar. So really a good play by Mika, a good vision by Borgen to see that as well. Another point for JT Miller in his second stint with the Rangers, and it ties it up at 1. And the Rangers, this game was not tied very often, but in the few moments that it was, Rangers had chances to take the lead. Late in the first, a little bit in the third, but Stolarz was up to the test every time. And so it stays 1-1 going in the second period, and then Rangers just never really had much, again, it wasn't tied very long. The Rangers did tie it. And 51 seconds in the second period, William Nylander scores a 34th goal unassisted. A really poor change by the Rangers, and that's another thing we've seen all year long is these bad changes. Again, mental things, not like necessarily like the hockey stuff. It is just a slow change by the guys that run, puts the players coming on the ice in a tough position. Now, and in part it was some players changed, some didn't. And Toronto ends up on kind of a breakaway for William Nylander, but like 3 guys to kind of 1. Vakanainen, who is coming off the bench, races back. And it's an initial save by Igor, but it's never really fully corralled. And I'm not sure if Vakanainen got a piece of it trying to get it to Igor. It was tough to tell, but it eventually goes off of Igor and in. John Tavares was in the vicinity, but it's Nylander's goal. Just not a good goal to allow. Bad job by the Rangers on the change. Again, a little sloppy by Vakanainen and Shesterkin, but it ended up being more frantic than it ever needed to be. And originally it was ruled no goal, but clearly went over the line and in and gives Toronto a 2-1 lead there. And then soon thereafter, Ryan Lindgren is called for interference on Pontus Holmberg at 134. But the Rangers do kill that off. Then later on at 13:10, Bobby McMahon holds Braden Schneider. Rangers get a power play. They don't score on it. And then what do you get towards the end of that power play? And it was not a good-looking power play. Again, I do not like the 5 forwards for the power play. One, too many men on the ice. And that's and part of why that happened is because I'm sure there's confusion with the fact that Adam Fox is not on that first unit, one defenseman, and I bet you that had something to do with it. Not an excuse, but that's what it is. Luckily, the Rangers kill off that portion of it, and then the Rangers, catch a bit of a break at the end of the period. John Tavares interferes with their Vakanina at 1956. The Rangers pretty much get a fresh, close to full power play coming out of the third, but they don't score on it. And again, more failure by the power play. And then at 2:28, Sam Carrick cross-checks John Tavares. But this ends up working out for the Rangers, third period. And like I always say, if there's one thing that has really been fairly consistent in a very good way, it's been that Ranger penalty kill. And they tied up shorthanded, which was great. Will Cooley, who has been starting to score some goals again lately, who scores a 16-goal season, assisted by Zibanejad at 3:47 of the third. Shorthanded goal. So give Mika 2 points in the night with that. And it was a nice play by Zibanejad and Cooley. We're both aggressive. Zibanejad causes the turnover, and he is able to make a nice move and finds Cooley, who then makes a very slick backhand, makes a nice move to score past Stolars and tie it up at 2. Will Cooley deserves to play more. I'll just say that. And he played 16 minutes or so tonight. And even still, it didn't feel like enough. Will Cooley should have more of a role on this team. And once Peter Laviolette figures that out, they'll be in a better position for it. I want to see more of him. I want to see less of Panarin. That's just the way it is. And less of Lafreniere as of now too. Just, based on merit and based on who deserves it. So that makes it 2-2 and you're feeling pretty good. And then after that, still shorthanded, Vincent Trocheck wires one off the crossbar. So the Rangers had an opportunity to make it 3-2. However, less than 3 minutes after the Cooley goal, Matthew Knies gives the Leafs the lead at 6:21, 3-2 Toronto, assisted by Matthews and Marner. And blame to me, it's a combination of Shesterkin, Jones, and Schneider. I'll give it mostly to Shesterkin. Puck goes behind the Ranger net, and it's a good, very sound play by Marner to get behind the net, and he basically beat Zach Jones. And Shesterkin needed to basically go the other way. Now, I know he had Matthews coming around there, but Matthews wasn't as close to the boards. So Igor just fires it into Marner. It just, in real time, it looked wrong. And I've noticed lately, Igor, the puck handling and puck management has not quite been there. And it hasn't always necessarily led to a goal against. But I have noticed it. And now this one does cost him in a big, big way. And so Jones is trying to trap behind the net. And that's that thing with Jones and Strider again, that it gave me flashbacks to when those two struggled when they were younger. So while the pair makes sense and while they had some good moments, not great there by the trio of Shesterkin, Jones, and Strider. And it's an easy passing play. Marner to Matthews to Knies for the easy goal. And it's not a goal you'd see by the Rangers. It's not, in terms of, you look at like Panarin, he's not doing that shit. But Toronto's top guys, they are. And so that gives the Leafs a 3-2 lead. And then you get one more power play chance as well. William Nylander, high six, Ryan Lindgren, 9:25. And I will say about Lindgren, even without Adam Fox, he has been playing better lately. In a situation where his days as a Ranger are not much longer, whether it be the trade deadline or whether it be in the offseason, he's not going to be a Ranger next year. That all said, playing a little bit better lately. And interesting enough, without Fox, but the Ranger power play doesn't do anything. And I felt like you were getting more chances with the second unit, to be honest. So Laviolette really needs to reevaluate that next game. And so ultimately, Rangers, they were pushing 6-on-5. There were some chances, but Toronto wins 3-2 at Madison Square Garden. And really, in some ways, it's payback because, early in the year in October, Rangers won in Toronto in a game where the Leafs were better, in a game where Shesterkin was really good. Again, in his career, Igor has been way, way better at Toronto. In fact, like insanely good. Some of his best performances, but here, not good at all. And that's a problem. If the Rangers are to go anywhere this year, Shesterkin has to be so much more consistent than he's been. And so now February concludes with the Rangers 4 points back of a playoff spot. They are 4 points behind both wildcard positions, Detroit and Columbus. It's still close. It is, but the Rangers have just not had a great ability um, of getting a point in this playoff setup system. You need to get those loser points. You need to get games to overtime. So as much as the Rangers, they're very good in terms of like their regulation wins. They're excellent with that. So if this were a 3-2-1 point system, Rangers would probably be in the playoffs. But that's not the way it works, unfortunately. And so the Rangers are good from a tiebreaker standpoint because regulation wins the number one tiebreaker, but they're not good in terms of just point getting. Too many times they've lost in regulation. I mean, too many times you get no points. This is a game where if they had gotten one, it always stings. Mentally, there's a stinging because obviously when you lose an overtime in the shootout, like you, in theory, were very close to getting the 2 points. However, I'd like to believe, let's say the Rangers tie that game up with the Cooley goal, and then it's 2-2 in overtime and they lose it somewhere. You're disappointed, but you're also still feeling, okay, you know what? You can kind of live with that 1 point against a good Toronto opponent, but didn't happen, and it's been too often this year. So now 3 more games to the deadline, all games at home. And I'm looking at the next 2 specifically. It's a back-to-back home against Nashville and the Islanders. You got to come away with 4 points there. And the interesting thing is that Nashville is coming off of a game against the Islanders the day before. But then on the flip side, the Rangers are going to be playing an Islanders. The Rangers will be playing a back-to-back against the Islanders. So, and the Islanders will be looking for definitely revenge after they were kind of embarrassed at home. So that game, I don't know if it's concerned, but that's going to be a tough one to me. And you can't take Nashville completely lightly. They just beat Winnipeg, and that ended a winning streak of 11 games for Winnipeg. So Nashville has been the 3rd worst team in the league. Rangers already lost them this year. They got shut out at Nashville. But Nashville, they're really bad on the road. Look, if the Rangers lose to the Predators, it goes down as another horrible loss. It would really be inexcusable to lose. I would expect Jonathan Quick to get the Predator game and Shesterkin to get the Islander game. I feel pretty strongly that that's the way they'll go with it. And we will see what happens. But, you really, it's a game you cannot lose. And really getting 4 points is kind of what you have to do in those 2 games and then just see where it goes from there. Rangers can't afford to get on any type of losing streak here. As much as they're not getting the 3 straight wins, they're also doing a decent job of not really having too many losing streaks either. They'll lose one typically and then bounce back with a win, but they got to go on a little bit of a roll here. And unfortunately, they probably deserved a better fate, but did not get one tonight. Really, Anthony Stolar has outplayed Igor Shesterkin. That's kind of a general summary of the game. And we'll see what happens. First game with Adam Fox, I didn't think that you necessarily missed him as much as I thought you would even strength, but you definitely did on the power play. No question. Even though the Rangers power play hasn't even been that great, I feel as if it was extremely noticeable that I have him out there. So they're going to have to deal with that. No doubt about it. So, again, final score at Madison Square Garden is the Toronto Maple Leafs 3, the New York Rangers 2. And they'll be back home for a start of a back-to-back Sunday night and Monday night. First game against the Nashville Predators, and the next game is another one against the New York Islanders.